Hello, welcome. Marlene here for today's cookie project. We're making this gorgeous Valentine's Day cookie gift box, and now on to the step-by-step tutorial. Here is my template. I've got it in a sheet protector. If you want to reuse them, it keeps them nice. And now I'm just going to be piping my transfers on a piece of parchment paper. I'm flattening out my tipless bag. You see the seam there? I'm flattening it out. And then I've got these little sewing scissors that I find allow me to kind of really do a small cut easily. And you're better to cut and then pipe on a piece of like paper towel so you can see if it's a line that's good, and then recut, then cut a big line. You obviously can't stick the royal icing or the bag back together. So I'm just nipping off a little bit more. All right. And now also, if you want, you can just add a bit of icing to hold that parchment paper in place. And now I can quickly make my little transfers. I'm staying inside those black lines. And you can make these out of leftover icing at the end of an order. You can make them in white if you want and airbrush them. But in this case, I've colored my icing in 2 shades. So this is kind of my milk chocolate version, and then I have a darker brown for dark chocolate. I've made my squares and now I'm moving on to the rectangle shape. I find them a tad long, so I think I'm going to just shorten them a little bit. I don't know. Oh, what the heck, I'll just fill in the area. Now I'm making my dark chocolates, and it's exactly the same process. Just filling in my little guidelines with the icing, and we're going to let these dry a little bit. I'm going to add a bit of detail, and then we'll let them dry overnight before removing them from the parchment paper. You can make them well in advance, like a month even, and just make sure that they're in a dust-proof container. Here are my chocolates. They've had time to dry, and now I'm just going to come in and finish them off with some different kind of icing. And now here on the dark chocolate, I'm just going across with some ivory icing here and letting it kind of go off to the sides. I'm going to do some swirls on the dark chocolate. And now I'm making my little hearts, my royal icing hearts for my little boxes of chocolate. And I'm just quickly running through. I'm going to fill up this whole piece of parchment paper with these guys. I just keep moving the parchment paper to get the kind of guide underneath, and it's really helpful. Then they're all the same size. You can eyeball it, but they're not going to be as uniform if you want everything to kind of be the same. And then you can come in and just shape them further with your needle, the point especially. And I didn't take them all the way to super red. I'm going to airbrush them. I wanted them to be a little bit metallic, and so I'm going to do that with the airbrush. I'm starting off by adding kind of like a perimeter to my heart here, the outside of the box. I'm outlining the center and then the outer perimeter, and then we're going to fill that up and try to get it so that there's no seam between the outline and the flood icing. And I'm just shaking to see if I can get this to heal without too much fiddling. And it's not too bad. There's a few little points. You just kind of touch the surface and they usually go away. And that's it. I've got my, whoops, I've got a magnet. And that's it. We're gonna let this dry. And now I'm working in my red icing and I'm adding the top of the cookie here after I'm going to airbrush once this has had time to dry. You can use a can of mist. They sell these cans of like basically spray paint, but it's edible food color in the can. And so if you don't have an airbrush, you can get by with these cans. The only thing about the can is it does do a lot of wind, and so you have to make sure that whatever you're spraying is not going to blow away when you start spraying on it. So a cookie won't blow away, but the stencil will. And there. And I'm going to pick it up and shake it to get it to smooth. Over here I have a peak. Another good shake. That's it. And now I'm going to do the top part. And another shake. Once this has had time to dry, I'm going to come in and paint. Here's my cookie. The base has had time to dry. I'm going to line the stencil up so that it sits right dead center in the heart there. And you can line up at the bottom as well. Okay. I'm going to lock it in and I'm going to airbrush that in a darker red. And now moving on to my ribbon. I'm putting white against red. Sometimes that can be tricky. If you have issues with bleeding, one solution is simply to leave a hairline separation between the colors so that they're not actually touching. And that way it will obviously reduce the chances of bleeding if there's no actual contact between those two colors. If the gap bothers you, well, what's worse, the gap or bleeding? Sometimes we have to make decisions in life. I don't love the gap either, but better to be safe than sorry. doesn't, you can't always, not all designs kind of permit for this. Another option would be to, I haven't tried it, but I would assume that shellac would be a solution. Shellac is a clear spray that you can put on your baked stuff or whatever. They use it on apples even, and this will coat the darker color, kind of creating a barrier between the dark and the light, and then stop the bleeding. So you'd put your darker color on, shellac, and then put your lighter color. But you should Google shellac before you use it. It's used to coat M&Ms and jelly beans, but a little bit gross. Okay, so here's my completed almost top part of my candy box. The last step is the bow here that I want to add. Okay, now the bow that's going to go on top of all this, I'm stopping where the knot would be, and I'm just creating like a second layer of icing here for the loops on that bow. So I created a thin base layer, and now I'm doing the second layer to create a bit of definition on the bow. There. Let's heal everything. And that's it. I'm adding a ruffle to my heart now on the inside. It's a 101 tip. I'm going side to side, not up and down. I want it to really follow the edge of that inside perimeter. Starting here at the bottom corner, and I'm lining up right at kind of the red where it's touching the cookie. And I'm just doing a back and forth motion to create my ruffle. You see? And you can stop at the pull. You just pull and then you start again, and you can continue, and it fades into the joint, so it doesn't show that you stopped. I think I might take it off the easel here. It's turning on its own as I pipe, and I'm not getting the control that I want. And there. Now, because of that red on the outside, it kind of holds the ruffle up. Gives it a cute look, you see? Now we're going to fill this in with a little bit of white. I want it to be lower than the red edge, and the chocolate's going to sit in there. But next step to the base cookie here, I've got some runny white icing. I did add food gel for opacity to make sure that I don't see my cookie under there, and I'm just squishing it under like the seam of the ruffle to hide that. Just there, and then brushing. I don't want to have a lot of icing. I want to have a difference between that perimeter and the center of the cookie where the chocolates are going to go. There. And when your icing is runny like this, it dries much flatter once the moisture evaporates. Kind of like varnishes the cookie, as opposed to like how it normally is a little bit up above, raised on the cookie. I'm just squishing it under there. I can see a bit of my red there, so I'm just hiding that, squishing it, pushing it in. There. And then I'm going to shake it to smooth it out. But there it is for right now, and once this has had time to dry a bit, I'll add my chocolate. I'm going to quickly put this together. So here, when I piped it, I let the icing kind of fall off, so you can just break that off. You just kind of like chip it off, like so. And then I'm just adding a little line of icing behind, and then I can press that into the surface of the cookie. And you just run through your set. Now, like I said, what's great is you can get rid of the ones that you don't find so nice. We're our worst critics. It's kind of more annoying to throw away a whole cookie than just one of these little icing elements. And they don't have to be like welded on. You just need a little bit of icing to kind of secure it. My icing's on the stiff side. It's the same icing I made the ruffles with. And for the ruffles to hold, well, you need stiff icing. And the other thing that's great is when you make the elements on the parchment paper also, is that you get kind of like a more raised thing. It's not sinking into the other icing, and it looks more like the chocolates, see? And this is why I had made this section a little bit more kind of concaved. And you might need to just kind of tweak so that everything fits. And that's why I'm using white icing, so that if I do shift things around and it shows, well, it won't matter. It's the base color. And there is the box of chocolates. I had made my royal icing transfers in 2 sizes since I wasn't sure how it was going to fit on my cookie, and my smaller version I used to accent my little bows. I just thought it would be cute and I'd get to use them. And it's just a dot of icing right there to secure the bow, but everything's not dry right now. I'm going to hold off on doing that. And then I've got my little set. So ideally you would package them staggered so that, you know, the whatever cookie you decide to put in the front, that the other one is exposed. Ideally, I think you would put the lid in the back, just because of the ruffle here. If something is leaning on that, it could crack. And this is the showpiece anyway, the chocolate one. If you're going to go through all the trouble of decorating cookies, make sure you package them to do them justice. When you package them, you're basically framing your cookies. The bag, the box, the ribbon, it matters. It makes the difference how much you can charge. Presentation is very important. I've got this pretty box here with a nice window that will showcase my cookies. Now we're just going to fold the box so that I can put them in there. Alright, so ideally you're going to put some paper or something in there to stop them from kind of bouncing around so that they stay in place, and also it adds to the look. Now this is a 2-piece set. Here are the cookies. I have to tell you, I absolutely love the red on red damask there. I love it, and I also love my little chocolate in front of the heart. I wasn't sure about that. So here how I've got it set up, I've got the chocolate that is really the showpiece, that one, in front of this one. And you can kind of crowd them a little bit, but the box is going to go on top, so you might want to, you know, think about that if you have too much of this stuff. It's just so that they don't rock around, but you don't really need that much of it. And it can cause the box like to hit the top, especially here I have that chocolate sticking up a bit. So there, I'm going to fold the top now. It's the same as the base. If your kids are a certain age, they can help you with this. If you have a lot of boxes, it does take time. And if you're not decorating, well, you're losing money. So if you can have unskilled labor assembling your boxes, that's what's best. Now, you see my little chocolate there? It's hitting the top of my box. I'm just going to move my paper, as I need it for this one since it's kind of raised. So I'm just shifting that around, and now it's fitting. It's still hitting though, I have to say, and I don't, oh, I have a little bit here. Let's see if I can move it there. But you want to factor all these little kind of details in there. You don't want the thing squished too much in the box. So it is hitting here, but it's okay. And I prefer to have my ribbon like this. That way it's not hiding too much of my actual cookies, you see? And then you can kind of tie it like that. And you want to do your loops. I tie my bow usually upside down. It just rests better. And obviously you want to use a coordinating ribbon. I'm just trimming the tail there. And the same thing on the other side. I actually try not to cut the ribbon until everything is tied so that I don't get it wrong. This way you can cut and it's exactly the right length. So there is the presentation. And here is the completed cookie. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. These elaborate projects, they're not that difficult if you plan ahead and you get your steps done in advance. You can do it. You can make these fancy cookies. This is airbrushed. This is nothing. What a basic cookie here the bow is, but just it comes together and makes something that looks fancy. And these royal icing transfers, so easy. I'm pretty confident that a beginner can pull this off. So thanks so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future uploads, and I'll see you next time.